So first of all, thanks for having me. I'm an alumnus of MIT. I graduated in '97, so that would kind of date me, and I moved to the US after that. So for those in the CS world, I actually did my master's at the University of Wisconsin, which is a pretty big computer powerhouse. So the internet, as you probably know, one of the places that it was founded and created was from the University of Wisconsin. And databases, I mean, it's been pretty interesting coming out of Wisconsin. After Wisconsin, I worked in the auto sector. I did a lot around IoT. One of the teachers were talking about IoT, robotics. In '97, robotics, rapid prototyping, computer-generated simulation, this was all a very different, it was a very different space. I mean, it was completely cutting edge. People thought we were really crazy, right? We would take AR, VR goggles and we would be simulating things, and very different at that time. I mean, now you're seeing it kind of after 25 years come into the mainstream. So I did that, and then after that, I went to Harvard. So I got my MBA from Harvard Business School. And one of my mentors was Clay Christensen. So Clay, has anybody here heard the word disruptive technology? Show of hands if anybody has heard disruptive technology. Disruption, disruptive. So Clay Christensen coined the term. So I worked with Clay. I helped set up the first strategic practice at Deloitte focused on disruptive innovation. So I don't know if Apple's Beats headphones are available here. So Apple bought Beats for about $3.5 billion. That was my project. So I told, at that time, Monster, to come up with that product, and that was one of my products that Apple ended up buying. I've done some really interesting stuff, luckily, in that space, focused on innovation, entrepreneurship, very much cutting-edge things. So that's been a little bit of my background. But I've also been a recovering entrepreneur. So for some weird reason, I've been doing consulting, and then I do a startup. So I did My Skin, where we were the first in the world to have figured out how to quantify skin health. So skin, which is our largest organ, right? How many people here use, let's say, a moisturizer? There you go, like everybody uses a moisturizer. Any one of you, I want you to tell me how much moisture is good for your skin. I want a number. So there you go. Weight, we know exactly what weight is good. Blood sugar, we know exactly what blood sugar levels are good. Cholesterol, we know exactly how much cholesterol is good. Now you are applying a product to a living organ, and none of you know how much is good. And something as simple as moisture, right? And then there's oil, there's collagen, elastin. So somebody missed the largest organ of the body. That's what I realized. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to figure out how to quantify and measure skin health. So we came up with an optical imaging device. This was an IoT device. We figured out, cracked the code. I ran the company for 12 years, set up a big dev center in Belgrade in Serbia. I had a team in the US. We were on every continent. We raised over $16 million in the course of the company. I did deals with P&G, Philips, Samsung, Shiseido, I mean, you name them. And then in 2018, I got a large strategic investment from this $19 billion German company called Evonik. So at that time, I said, you know what, doing startups is incredibly tough. I just wanted to take some time and energy and recover. So at that time, Deloitte reached back out to me, and they said, hey, Rahul, we want to start new businesses which are over the horizon, cutting edge. So would you want to come back to Deloitte and lead the future of health practice? So everything to do around future of health, which is forward-looking, over-the-horizon healthcare, that's basically what I did. So this was pre-COVID. Now you'll find it funny. I used to talk about healthcare, like vaccinations happening in pharmaceutical companies. I used to talk about people on doctors on mobile platforms doing consultations with you. I used to talk about drone-based deliveries. So there were all these things that we used to talk about. And literally, nobody would listen to me. On 13th March, when the US shut down, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. So Operation Warp Speed. So how many of you have taken a COVID vaccine? So my team ran Operation Warp Speed, which was the generation of the vaccine, at least in the US. My teams ran the first program in the US, Jacob Javits, doing up vaccinations off hospital locations. So everything to do around that. So that's basically the kind of things that we did. And I was really fortunate. And then now, after doing that for a couple of years, I said, okay, I really like building stuff. So that's why I said I'm a recovering entrepreneur. So I've decided to come back into startup land. So that was just a quick introduction. And I'm going to walk around because I like to walk around and, let's try and make this the big audience, but let's try and make it as interactive as we can. So the goal for today is threefold. I think everybody here has heard the word AI. Okay, great. Thank God. So the goals for today are threefold. One is I want to walk you through some of the aspects of AI and the implications of AI. What is AI? Do a little bit of basic stuff, and then we'll get into a little bit more complicated things. Secondly, I want to connect AI to the implications to entrepreneurship and to all of you from a future perspective. Because AI is not a word or a world that resides by itself. It has implications to creating huge value. And all of you here are going to have the opportunity to create that sort of value. And the third goal for today is to connect that to leadership. Because you are all going to be those people who are going to be leaders. So, we'll cover some of that. But those are the three goals. To talk about AI, connect it to entrepreneurship, and then take it and understand the implications for each of you. So if we achieve that goal and you feel a little bit inspired or even a little bit scared, you're on the right path. Right? Because it is a little bit scary, very frankly. So with that, I'm going to I'll walk through a couple of slides. So I think we'll go through a quick agenda. What is AI? We'll talk about a couple of potential use cases. So it was very interesting. So we'll do a little bit of potential use cases, and then we'll connect it to entrepreneurship and leadership as the last step. So those are the three goals that I did want to get out. So first of all, just a little bit of level set. What is AI? Unfortunately, 4 years ago, there was no intelligence in AI, and there was no learning in ML. And the world has changed. 4 years ago, we were in a very different spot. And I was telling people here, none of you probably remember dial-ups. How many of you have dialed up into the internet? Like a phone line dial-up. Okay, good. Nobody has. So that's a good sign. But if you think about it, you used to dial up to the internet, where you would get, we thought 256 kilobytes used to be a super fast speed at that time. We were like, wow. Now we do, about 1 GB a second, right? When we were at our computers, just think back. And we were thinking about connecting and just reading a web page, and that was in the internet. And Bill Gates famously came out and said that everything that had been invented has already been invented. This was 1998. In 2008, we were now being able to order taxi cabs on our smartphones. Who would have been able to predict that exponential rise? How many here have used a Nokia phone? That little jingle, and you played that snake game or whatever, Anybody here who's done that? There you go. Where is Nokia today? 10 years ago, literally, that was the standard. In India, you couldn't walk into a restaurant without a Nokia, that jingle going off. 10 years. How many of you play Snake today? There still are a few. But now it's all on your smartphone. Completely different interface. There was no touch. Would you have been able to predict exponential? When you were playing, now think back, when you had that Nokia phone in your hand, would you have been able to predict that this thing is going to be as good as a paperweight, and I'm going to be using something where I can talk to it, I can say, hey Google, hey Siri, whatever. right? So my point is exponential. Think exponential in this case. Because now you have to start thinking about what is going to happen exponentially from this moment onwards. That's really, really important. When I talk about robots doing surgery, people go, nah, that's not going to happen. Right? People said the same thing about talking to doctors on phones. People said the same thing about moving cash digitally. Like, there is no way I'm going to pay digitally. This is 10 years ago. I remember a discussion here where, about 10 years ago, how many of you here use Google Maps? So I think there are quite a few hands. I'm surprised what the other people use, but maybe they just don't go anywhere. So very interesting, about 10 years ago, I was having this discussion and people in India, Google Maps are just starting in India. And unanimously people here said, there is no way. Today, very frankly, I'm surprised some of you are not raising your hands because I know that Google Maps has now become the standard in India. So there you go. Right now, when I talk to people about autonomous driving, Tesla, right? Right now, what are people saying? Arey yaar, there is no way. Ye India mein to Tesla chalne hi nahi wala. And every time I hear that, I go, wow, this is exactly what people were saying 10 years ago with Google Maps. So exponential thinking is real. And change is going to hit you very, very quickly. So people who are in the driving world, for example, it's going to hit you. And it's going to hit all of us. And that's the power of AI, because Tesla is actually an AI platform. So first, what is AI, right? I mean, you give AI lots of training data. So Google has given it a bunch of YouTube videos, you give it words, you give it pictures, you start drawing certain inferences. That's basically what it does. And you teach your computer to think like a brain, right? So right now, ChatGPT, everybody's using ChatGPT? Yeah, everybody knows, right? Yeah, great. So ChatGPT is a fancy autocorrect. It's a next word predicting algorithm, which is why I say in the world of AI, the I is still a little bit missing, right? So what's happening is you give it lots of pictures, you ask it, it hears you talking about lots of things. So when you are on WhatsApp, when you interact with, actually, Meta is learning. That's how Llama gets built, because it's getting context. That, hey, when you said, ki, aaj 4 baje chai mein milenge kya? The conversation starts evolving in certain ways, right? So they learn all that. You continue to give it lots of data when you send it pictures, and then humans actually validate it. Right? So there are still human validation systems that still work out, because when you hit a like, you actually validate some of the data that's been coming through. So broadly, we're giving it lots of data, but it's not as smart as yet. It's still a fancy autocorrect. So I was showing my 12-year-old, I have 2 daughters, 16 and 12, and I was telling my 12-year-old, she was doing a math problem, right? So she was trying to figure out what would be the run rate on certain cash flows. I told her, okay, if you put 50,000 rupees, in a bank account and it grows at 8% a year for 31 years, what would it be worth, right? So we put it into ChatGPT, we put it into Gemini, and we put it into Perplexity. 3 different AI models, right? All 3 had different answers. So why does that happen? Anybody know? Because it's a statistical model. So what happens is, it looks at 8%, it looks at 50,000, and it determines which is the most probable next number in that sequence that exists on the internet. Now, each one of these models has different training data, which is why each one surfaces a completely different answer. So it's not really calling a tool to do math. It's just predicting statistically the most probable kind of answer that exists, which is why each one of those models comes up with a different answer. So broadly, I mean, this is what, what AI has been doing and where we are, and some of the things that are now being addressed, right? And so this is really important. The pace of change is exponential. And even here, when you start thinking about the statistical models, the ability to do math, the ability to call tools and functions, it's moving exponentially. So I'm sure all of you have heard about agentic systems. So what are ChatGPT, Gemini, I mean, at a broad level, these are very basic large language models, right? These are large languages and just have a ton of data, right? It's a bunch of data, they boiled the ocean and they've come up, whatever, with a large language model. Agentic systems are the next level. So all of you need to not be worried about AI, you need to be worried about agentic system. So what are agentic systems? Agentic systems are agents who go all the way to taking a decision. So anything which is standard decisions, that, okay, there are 1,000 people here, 1,300 people here. I need to change the electricity load here because there's all this thing happening. An agent will actually be sitting there, a virtual agent. Agent is a digital tool, right? And it will be driving, helping the MSCB or whoever it is to figure out that the load here should now be higher. It's taking a decision all the way. Now the problem with that decision is if the agent is optimized for only making sure that electricity usage here is high, it may take away from a neonatal pregnancy ward of an hospital and send electricity here. And people could die. And this is not something that's hypothetical. This is stuff that has already started happening. Which is why autonomous driving is very real. Because autonomous driving, Tesla, Waymo, I don't know if you've heard of Waymo, which does autonomous, like I take Waymo rides when I'm in San Francisco. Just 2 months ago, I was in San Francisco. I was sitting in my car, I'd rented a car, I was driving, 11 in the night, 4 taxis come up. The first 3 had no driver. Only one guy in the back had a driver like me. And I'm like, oh my God. Not only was I impressed that, wow, this is real, but I was like, oh my God, lots of drivers are going to be losing their jobs. Because you're talking about 60% of an economy runs on things which are related to driving. Trucks, cabs, rickshaws, I mean, you name it. So dislocation that could happen is very real, right? And this is an agentic system. It goes all the way to a decision. Because Tesla, with all reality, it has to make decisions. When you see these cameras on the other side, it's making a decision that at some point, a situation where I can either hit one person and potentially kill that person, or I can hit 5 people and potentially injure them. And that code has already been programmed. You just don't know about it. Now the net is the cars are a lot safer, right? Because you're having a lot less accidents and so on and so forth. But it's an agentic system. It is making life and death decisions. The other day, we were talking about warfare. Everybody here has heard of drones, I imagine, right? You should go walk behind the speaker. So, with the whole Ukraine conflict, Ukraine-Russia, I mean, what's been going on. People were like, oh, you know what? We got to make sure that the world of military, there is no, like these systems do not take life and death decisions. And I told him, I said, wait a minute. You're making life and death decisions with Tesla every day. You're making life and death decisions with these driverless cars with Waymo every day, right? And then I told them, I said, they were like, no, but in the world of military conflict, you can't have these systems, these agents making decisions, right? So I said, hang on. I said, let's look at the news today. This morning, Ukraine launched 220 drones. Russia took down 199 of them down. Right? And I told them, I said, do you really think that there are humans who are monitoring 220 drones? And do you even think that it's feasible to take down 199 of them down? The reality, we don't realize it here. The reality is life and death decisions. The agents making these sort of decisions has already become real. There was a company in the US, Knight Capital. So they had set, for those in the MBA space, they had set up a high-frequency trading platform. This was an AI/ML platform. It was supposed to make trades. It would see like, oh, stock price is going down. It would move $1 million here, $1 million there, sell, buy, sell, buy. The agent went wrong. In 20 minutes, before a human could interact, by the time they realized something was wrong, blah, 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 the company had lost $660 million. 20 minutes. The company went bankrupt. True story. Knight Capital, look it up. So agents can make decisions very efficiently, but you have to have certain guardrails, right? And that's what you are all going to be faced with this sort of a world. AI is not about replacing humans. For you people, for all you students, it is AI in the hands of humans that are going to replace those without AI. So it's humans plus AI who are going to replace humans. And now it's your decision which side of that equation you want to be on. I mean, already, even in my startups, we only hire people who are really, really adept at using AI tools, right? And what happens is, it is a very much an energy play. So if right at the bottom, I have this thing where normally a human brain operates a mathematical transaction at about 20 watts. That's one exaflop. So one exaflop of transaction takes about 20 watts with the brain, right? And for a supercomputer today, these AI models, it takes 1,000,000 times that much energy. So it's highly energy inefficient, which is why you see nuclear energy, hydrogen, all these things. Why is it becoming an energy play? It's because it's still very inefficient. That's why it's very expensive. You can't replicate human thought as efficiently as yet. I think that's the key point. So broadly, again, just wanted to cover AI, what's happening there, the challenges, the implications of agentic systems. So I want to walk through a few use cases. I know everybody's used ChatGPT, so I may not spend too much time on a bunch of these things. But broadly, I literally, now I use, all my emails go through agents, right? Whether it's through OpenAI, through Word, blah, blah, blah. So just the other day, you want to send an email, right? So let's say, give me an idea, like somebody who's playing with some really sensitive email they want to send to somebody, like charge them wrong or whatever. Give me an idea. Let's try this. We want to do this in real time so that you get a sense as to what is happening, right? And some people would be fairly experts, but I also want to see, get it so that people, who are not avid users get comfortable with some of these tools, right? So give me an idea. What are you struggling with? Like somebody's charged you wrong, or you had a bad product experience, or anything like that? Give me an idea. Like you want to apply to a job, or whatever. What's on your mind? You want to apply for a job. So which company do you want to apply for? I'm sorry? JP Morgan. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to share my screen. So can we share my screen? Okay. Oops. Hang on. So I'm going to share my screen. Thanks for taking the cold call. Okay, there we go. Okay. So I'm going to go to ChatGPT. I mean, all of you probably know ChatGPT. And I'm going to say, write me an email to the head of HR at JP Morgan, showcasing my skills in AI, and what else? Like what's something unique that you'd want to cover? What's your interest? Is it fixed income? Is it trading? Is it investment banking in AI? And my passion for investment banking. So normally, pre-ChatGPT, this would take us about a day, right? We would write multiple things, I would edit it, blah, 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 right? There we go. If you are writing emails the old way, you guys are doing it wrong. And I'm not saying cut, copy, paste. That's not what I'm saying. But your ability to increase your skill level off the bat to 80% is astounding. Now you can sit here and I can copy it and I can edit it and I can do all sorts of things. Don't take your voice away. There is still an aspect of being human. That's not going to go away. But your ability to raise your game to 80%, where you have a PhD, a team of PhDs by your side, in seconds to give you insights, is astronomical, right? So just to give you a sense, the other day, so you can see, let's see, I'll bring something up. So I was with one of my friends, he's bought these toll operations in Maharashtra. So they operate toll booths, okay? So let me move this, right? So I asked him, so before you look at the screen, I asked him, I said, hey, how many trucks are passing? Like, do you know real time on your cell phone? Do you get a report which says how many vehicles have passed, what collections have been, blah, blah, blah. He says, no, Rahul, I have a tech person in my team. He sits at the toll booth, right? And at the end of the day, every day he runs a report and I get a static report at the end of the day. I said, listen, I said, dude, I've not written a line of code, but I'm going to show you something where you're going to put an app on your damn phone in 5 minutes. And he's like, because I asked him, I said, why don't you set an app? And he said, oh, it's going to take me 6 people. I got a quote. They said it will take me about 4 months and it was going to cost me 3 lakhs, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I'm like, no, dude, hang on. I said, I'm going to tell you, I said, I'm not a computer engineer. I'm going to show you how to do this in 5 minutes. So that was the prompt that I put in. So all of you guys remember, you got to start thinking in terms of prompts and how to ask a question, right? So what I did was here, I just basically said, write me a code for a dashboard on my iPhone to track how many vehicles are passing and toll collected on a highway in Maharashtra. Why did I do that? Because there are local laws in Maharashtra that have to be adhered to, right? So right away, it built me a simple dashboard using Streamlit, which is a Python framework thing. These are the features of the dashboard. It says tracks the number of vehicles, blah, blah, blah. It installed the dependencies. It wrote me the code. So it wrote me damn code. Here, you can look at the code. It told me how to run the software. It's got web server. It's got, it told me open it up in Safari or Chrome. This is how guys, I have not written a line of code in 28 years. This is the power. Suddenly you are an expert, or you have a team of experts who sit by you and give you a great starting point. Whether it's communication, whether it's things like this, whether it's, like I took my dad, to the military hospital, and, my dad's 87, and I just took a picture. I took a picture of his blood report. So there you guys go. You can see, the hematology report, so on and so forth, right? It would have taken me hours to talk to the doctor, blah, blah. I just took a picture and I said, what should I be concerned about in this blood report? You see that prompt there? And right away, it gave me what to do. Basically, it said iron and B12 deficiency, nothing to be concerned about. When I went to the doctor, so after an hour when the doctor looked at us, and I asked the doctor, what should I be concerned about? He said the same thing. But his response was nowhere as good as ChatGPT. I have a doctor by my side. I have a coding expert by my side. I have a communication expert by my side. Guys, this is what you need to be using every day. If you are not using it every day, you are the person, the human who doesn't have AI, who's going to be replaced by somebody who has AI. Because your ability to increase your game has gone up exponentially. Exponentially. And I want to be dead honest. So make sure you're using all these apps. So that was just a quick synopsis. I wanted to show on, the aspects of, can we get my computer again? For a second, yeah. So we talked about emails, there's thoughtware, so for example, I'm writing a policy document, so I'm actually writing a chapter. I'm a lead author for the US. We are coming up with a public-private partnership around pharma, so pharma research. So how do you come up with drugs, basically? Find cures, so on and so forth. So I'm writing for the government, for the US government, I'm writing a chapter or a guideline on how this should be changed in tomorrow's world. Literally, I know the thesis and the creative part I know. I wrote a 30-page document in an hour, a book, literally. I have the world's top leading lawyers. She's my former professor of entrepreneurial law, and we wrote a book on entrepreneurial law, which became the gold standard at Yale, Stanford, and Harvard. So we wrote. She just sent me. There you go. So she just sent me this article. So maybe this was the. So there you go. Accelerating therapeutic innovation, a framework for AI-enabled data-driven partnership. A very complex, complicated topic which doesn't exist today. So it's all forward-looking. So, it's got, my thing, it's got Connie Bagley's, we got the abstract. Look at it. This is the whole freaking, you can just see me. I didn't write the whole book using AI, let's just be honest. Right? But I was able to get 80% of the basic stuff. How does public-private partnerships work? How would pricing work? Where do the AI platforms work? What are the resources, the references that I could do? I used Perplexity. All these things. I use a lot of these tools. But 80%. So I did this in about an hour. A friend from Mumbai, he's writing a fiction novel where I'm one of the protagonists. We were in boarding school, so he's got me. It's a time warp thing where, it's a fun thing. Where we hit a time disturbance in the time warp thing, and my photos start disappearing and blah blah blah, and so it's a fiction book. After 1 hour of writing this thing, in the next 1 hour, I was able to write not one but 6 sequels to that book. Guys, this used to take years. If you are not doing this kind of stuff, then something is wrong. You should be writing LinkedIn articles. You want to go to JP Morgan. You want to do about investment banking. You know what? Every week, this is your challenge. I want you to write an article, post it on LinkedIn, come up with a picture using Instagram, with Llama, whatever, which supports your article. Do it. That is going to be the difference. That is what's going to separate you, because you get seen. People will notice, oh my God, you're doing this cool stuff. And that's what's going to differentiate you. So patents. Anybody here who has written a patent? Nobody here has written a patent. Nobody, right? Okay. So I have about 6 patents to my name. And it used to be a really complex process. Very complex process. I paid about $100,000 per patent. Took about 1 year to file a patent. Right? So my 16-year-old daughter, she came up with when people have an emergency, you have these, the ambulance shows up, we call them EMTs, emergency medical technicians, right? And you are there, you are dying, or whoever it is, they're passed out, and the person has no data on them. There's no data. Like, hey, what are your basic stuff? What are your allergies? Do you have a heart condition? Do you have diabetes? Basic stuff. And then they try and give you some medication, and invariably it backfires. So 50% of the deaths happen because this person doesn't have access to data. So my 16-year-old daughter came up with this opportunity where she said, we're going to come up with an app which on medical ID on your Apple phone, it will connect with your electronic medical records, and it will just flash when somebody, it can be unlocked without a Face ID and all that. So that's part of medical ID. And then it'll just flash allergies, health conditions, and basic vitals. Vitals is heart rate, blah, 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 right? So she did that. And I walked into that high school. This is a high school, okay? High school in the US is 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. So at that time, my daughter was a 10th grader. I told her, I walked these kids through how to write a patent app. So I basically, that was the prompt I said, give me a patent app. There you go. It wrote an entire patent. You can write patents, you can do these market surveys. So this is all the stuff. If I can get my computer for a second. So, I mean, there are lots of tools. Creation of content, right? So we talked about patents, customer survey. I don't know if you've done Otter. So, for example, I'll just show you my Otter app. So just yesterday, you know, one of so at the government level, the oncology roundtable. So basically, you know, we were having a discussion. So last night, you know, I'm doing this thing around oncology. I'm helping these guys basically figure out different financing models, so on and so forth. So I just turned on Otter. Broadly, what's happening is it's got the entire conversation recorded. So my agents, I send my virtual agent into the call. You know, we talk about these things, and then right away, it gives me a summary. So it tells me, explore getting funding and support from Schmidt Futures. So Eric Schmidt's company, you know, his aspect, Modi Ventures, which is another firm. Right away, it gives me everything. It just gives me the key takeaways. In a meeting, you guys, when you have a team meeting, you need to have an agent in that meeting. Turn on Otter, look at Sonics, there are all these different apps. You will notice your productivity is going to go through the roof because right away it will automatically tell you, you know, she said this, you know, she offered to do this, you offered to do that. Everybody gets the emails automatically. Now, when I'm in work meetings, I have an agent who's trained on my voice. So I may look at the meeting agenda and I would say, in this meeting, I want to get clarity on pricing, I want to get clarity on customer segmentation and the use of AI for doing something. The agent goes on the meeting call. I don't even go. And then they talk. Like the team is speaking, my agent speaks. It puts these things down into a note. They have a great conversation, decisions are made. Agent comes back and reports to me. This stuff is real. If you aren't doing these kind of things, you are not falling behind, you're becoming irrelevant because the pace is astronomical. So broadly, again, all sorts of content, I do want to tell you, whether it's articles, whether it's videos, whether it's songs, the cost of creating content has dramatically collapsed. Last week, I was speaking at this conference in Miami, where, you know, I had Google, I had Morgan Stanley, I had BCG on the stage, and I had no idea why I was on the stage. And I told these guys that for my startup on the health side, we were able to come up with an entire content calendar for an entire year. Where I said, you know, come up with X content, YouTube content, blah, blah, blah. And it all came up with this content in minutes. For an entire year, with video, with photographs and all this kind of stuff. It is astounding. That same content would have taken me about 2 years, about 50 people, and $20 million to do. I was able to do literally for free. These tools are really, really important for you because how many here want to work with a big corporate? Amazon, Google, Facebook. Okay, so there are a couple of hands that went up. I'm going to be very honest. We are skating to the business of one. These big corporates are going to be extremely threatened. Your ability is going to be starting businesses. These tools that I'm showing you enable you to identify an opportunity, go after it in a very cost-effective manner, and monetize it really, really quickly. Anybody here heard of DeepSeek? So DeepSeek. So the US response to DeepSeek is a company called CTGT. I'm an advisor to that company. It's 2 people. 2 people. Google Ventures just invested $10 million into that company. WhatsApp when it was bought was 19 people. Klarna, if you guys have in the world of finance, they're not hiring anybody. So the ability, there's going to be extreme fragmentation. You guys are going to be able to do what I call the business of one. And you're going to do that because you have these tools. You could not do this 5 years ago. You needed to hire 20 people. Right now I can come up with content, do surveys, blah, 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 write code, everything. And then I can get some experts on a contract basis who can just like finish it off. So that is the implication to entrepreneurship. And this entrepreneurship will also accelerate your chances of getting into big companies. Because they're going to look for these type of skills. Right? So make sure you're getting into all these spaces. And the implication for leadership. So I'm going to finish, that's the last point. As you think about your skills, right? I'm going to call out 3 skills that are going to differentiate you for the future. Curiosity, flexibility. Curiosity, we all know what that means. Flexibility, we all know what that means. And thirdly, is going to be a nose for opportunity. So I'm going to talk about each one of those. Curiosity, you need to know all these things. Like, nobody meets me and says, Rahul, you're not curious. Right? Hopefully that's, it's very evident. Learning, your ability to be flexible. I keep killing ideas coming right now. I didn't know you were going to talk about air ambulances. I didn't know you were going to talk about investment banking. We're doing this in real time. This is not some hypothetical, I spent 3 hours coming up with a presentation to game the system. I'm showing you in real time, and it could have failed. You may not have realized it actually did fail once, because it came up with a survey, it didn't go out and deploy the survey. So I was like, oh, I got to deploy the survey. So it failed, but I was flexible. You got to be flexible. Thirdly, you got to have a nose. You got to know every problem you guys face is an opportunity. When you see something that bothers you, that is an opportunity. If people are doing trash, throwing rubbish, that's an opportunity. If the sidewalks are bad, that's an opportunity. Think of scale. How are you going to scale? If you're concerned with your parents are somewhere and nobody's taking care of them, that's an opportunity. You have the opportunity to launch these businesses, and you can do it while you are at school or in college. Every person should have 2 goals. One is write a patent app while you are here. 2, start a business. Don't worry about success, failure. Starting that business is success. So those are 3 things that are going to help you from a leadership perspective. And it doesn't matter if you're at a big firm or at a small firm. The big firms are going to value you for exactly these 3 things. So on that note, thank you.